We're learning more about Cambridge Analytica and its mining of data on millions of Americans for political purposes. According to The Guardian, the firm harvested personal data from U.S. voters without permission. That information was then used to support President Trump's candidacy. The company, which has ties to former Trump advisor Steve Bannon, has since been suspended from Facebook. Joining me now from London is Carol Cadwalder. She's a reporter for The Guardian and The Observer and co-authored the article breaking the story. Carol, tell us exactly how you learned about Cambridge Analytica's data harvesting.
Well, I first wrote about this a year ago. That was 1 year after The Guardian initially broke this story. So we know that Facebook have known about this for at least 2 years. And a year ago, I met this extraordinary young man, Christopher Wiley, who's a former Cambridge Analytica employee and who actually helped set up the company. And he had this amazing story to tell about how he had been involved with the harvesting of this absolutely massive amount of Facebook data. Now, Cambridge Analytica has always denied this, and Facebook have refused to answer questions on it. But Chris has the paper trail. He had the receipts, he had the invoices, he had the contract. So there's absolutely no doubt at all that this had happened. But because we had so many difficulties getting this story out, Cambridge Analytica threatened to sue The Guardian. We had very serious threats against us. Christopher had an NDA with the company, so it's taken us a year to get him out and on the record. And then we put questions to Facebook on Monday. And then yesterday, they issued this extraordinary threat against us, claiming that these allegations were false and defamatory. So they went completely on the offensive. And then in the middle of the night, our time here, they put out a statement, they acknowledged it, and they banned Cambridge Analytica from the platform. So it really is amazing the lengths they have gone to deny that this took place and to acknowledge they've just failed to inform users that upwards of 50 million people's profiles, everything, all this private information was taken and used without, against their knowledge or will.
And as you mentioned, Cambridge Analytica says they completely deny any sort of wrongdoing. Christopher Wiley, the reported whistleblower that you spoke to and befriended and got this access to, why do you think it is that he felt so necessary for him to come forward?
He didn't initially. He was very troubled when I first talked to him a year ago. He was very uncertain, and he felt kind of guilty and responsible, and he just needed to talk, really. And then he kind of couldn't stop talking. And initially he came forward as an anonymous source. So he was an anonymous source for an article that I wrote last May, and that Facebook ignored at the time. It took no action at that time. And it became apparent that actually nobody was going to listen unless there was a person who was prepared to put their head above the parapet and to talk about this. And, you know, he's been incredibly brave, I think, to come forward now. He's incriminating himself in some ways, you might argue. He's taking responsibility, and all he is trying to do is to make Cambridge Analytica and Facebook also stand up and take responsibility and acknowledge what happened here.
You talk about how it's been a year since you've been wanting to publish this story. Talk to me a little bit about the threat of this lawsuit. Are you concerned that they might come and sue The Guardian?
I think it's increasingly difficult for them now to, but we have these in Britain, we do have difficulty. We have these defamation laws that do enable companies to shut down reporting. And it's a very serious threat, and it has inhibited our ability to tell this story. And I can really say that there's kind of been utter commitment from the news organisation to back this and keep at it and to try and get this story out. But it really has been despite all odds. And then yesterday, I mean, it was the icing on the cake then to have Facebook come out, send their legal letter, make these accusations at us and to try to shut the story down. And, we were just, we weren't having that. We were going to publish today.
Carol, why do you think it is that Facebook never bothered to notify their users despite knowing this for years?
Because it just wasn't in their interest. If they came out and said, well, we weren't aware of this at the time, but now we realise that actually this information that was taken, we thought maybe it was for academic purposes. We're unclear of what the story is here. But if they'd acknowledged that, then they would have to have told 58 million people that this information had been taken. And essentially, there was no way of getting it back. That's the thing. This information, once it's been taken, it is out in the wild. It can be copied. It can be stored elsewhere. It can be sold on. We just don't know what's happened to that data. And the most appalling thing to me is that the efforts that Facebook went to secure the data and to make sure, to do their best to see that it had been deleted. They did almost nothing. And this was the big point that Chris Wiley's making. And the thing that he had this letter from Facebook's lawyers, which acknowledged that the data had been taken, it was unauthorized. And they just said, he just said to me right from the start, he said, all they asked me to do was tick a box. They sent me a form, they said, tick a box and send it back. And he was like, literally, that's all they did.
What do you think this means? We know Brad Pascal is now going to be heading up President Trump's 2020 election campaign as a campaign manager. He was closely aligned with Cambridge Analytica. What does this mean for the future of politics?
I think that we are now alive to the fact that this profiling and targeting is going on. And we now know that political parties and candidates are using our private information to target us in ways that we don't understand. And we just need to ask more questions about this. What we desperately need is for Facebook to finally open up and be as honest and transparent as it can be about the way that their platform was used and manipulated during the US presidential elections, during Brexit in the UK. And we just need to know. And this continual pattern that we've seen with Facebook, try and shut the story down, finally, when it has no choice, acknowledge it. They've just really got to do better, I think.
Carol, do you think that ultimately Cambridge Analytica could have purchased this information directly from Facebook?
No, that isn't. It was all done by a third-party contractor. But what's happened is that Facebook has just turned around and blamed the third party, and its explanation to us, it keeps on saying to us, this is not a data breach. Well, we are saying to you, yes, it was a data breach. Our lawyers, we've been through this very clearly. We spoke to the Information Commissioner's Office in Britain yesterday, had a very long and detailed conversation with them, and we are clear this is a data breach. And Facebook's denials in the face of it, their claim that it's not a data breach because nobody hacked into their system. Well, failing to secure your own data, failing to see how it's being used and what is done to it, that still comes within the definitions of a data breach. Accept it, Facebook. It's a data breach. Own it and own up to the US electors, US voters about the way their data was stolen and used against them.
Carol Cadwaldo, thank you so much for joining us on CBSN.